A huge Greek army has captured the shores of Troy and is advancing on the walls of the city. Rumors are spreading that this is the largest army ever established, and the Trojans are preparing for war with all their might to protect their capital. While the Greek army includes the famous warrior, a huge Greek army has captured the shores of Troy and is advancing on the walls of the city. Rumors are spreading that this is the largest army ever established, and the Trojans are preparing for war with all their might to protect their capital. While the Greek army includes the famous warrior, Achilles and his Myrmidons, who never lost a battle. The Trojan army is led by the legendary warrior Prince Hector, heir to the Trojan throne. You will soon watch one of the most famous battles of the ancient period. Before watching the video, please subscribe to the channel and press the notification bell. Don't forget to open IT, so stay informed about the next chapter of war history. Now you can sit back with your tea and coffee. War history begins. The dates show 1200 BC. Agamemnon, king of the Mycenaean civilization on the western coast of the Sea of Archipelago, had all the Greek city-states under his control. These states recognized him as the most powerful king of the period. None of these kingdoms wanted to confront him or go to war with him. That's why they gathered under Agamemnon's yoke and agreed to send soldiers when necessary. Menelaus, brother of Agamemnon, became the king of Sparta by marrying the Greek Helen. This increased Agamemnon's power even more. At that time, the income of these city-states mostly depended on maritime trade, because Greece did not have enough land for agriculture. These cities were forced to engage in maritime trade. In this way, the Greeks became the real rulers of the Aegean and Mediterranean waters. A strong Hittite presence in Anatolia allowed the Greeks to trade safely with eastern Mediterranean ports. However, Hittite kings fall. During Thalia's rule, the Hittite Empire began to disintegrate in some places, as Cyprus, Ugarit, Hololuk, Rhodes and Egypt. The Greeks became very rich thanks to this trade. The heyday of the Greeks and the most powerful period of the Hittite Empire in Anatolia coincided with the same time period. In fact, the Arzawa principalities in the south were constantly in rebellion. The Gosgas in northern Anatolia were constantly troubling the Hittite state. Meanwhile, the developing Assyrian state became increasingly stronger and managed to make itself accepted as a great state even by the Hittites. Empire in Anatolia coincided with the same time period. A strong Hittite presence in Anatolia allowed the Greeks to trade safely with eastern Mediterranean ports. However, Hittite kings IV. During Thalia's rule, the Hittite Empire began to disintegrate in some places. In fact, the Arzawa principalities in the south were constantly in rebellion. The Gosgas in northern Anatolia were constantly troubling the Hittite state. Meanwhile, the developing Assyrian state became increasingly stronger and managed to make itself accepted as a great state even by the Hittites. The collapse of the Hittites, who were considered the dominant power of Anatolia, led to the emergence of some pirates in the Mediterranean. In other words, the weakening of the Hittite state made it impossible for Greek merchants to navigate safely in the Mediterranean. For a tribe whose livelihood depended entirely on maritime trade, this situation was a complete disaster, because the geographical situation of Greece was not suitable for agriculture anyway. In this situation, the only thing the Greeks could do was to shift the maritime trade blocked in the Dardanelles and Istanbul Straits. The first strait they had to pass was the Dardanelles, and the control of this strait was in the hands of the Trojans. The only way to cross the strait was to expel the Trojans from here. The Trojans fought with many countries that wanted to take control of the straits. In none of these wars, the walls of Troy could not be breached and the Trojan armies could not be defeated. However, in the 1200 BC, the unification of the Greek city-states around Agamemnon worried Priam, the last king of Troy, because he knew that Agamemnon's eyes were on the Dardanelles. King Priam did not want to confront him because of Agamemnon's growth and power. That's why the Spartan king made peace with Menelaus, brother of Agamemnon, and sent his sons Hector and Paris to Sparta to establish good relations. Menelaus held festivities and prepared celebrations in the Spartan palace to celebrate peace. The Trojan princes stayed here for about a month and participated in the entertainment. During these celebrations, SAD news came to Spartan king Menelaus. His grandfather on the island of Crete had died. Thereupon, King Menelaus set out for Crete to attend his grandfather's funeral. The Trojan princes were about to return to their country when an unexpected event happened. Paris, the youngest son of the Trojan king Priam, fell in love with King Menelaus' queen Helen during their stay in Sparta, and they had a secret relationship, taking advantage of Menelaus' absence. Paris kidnapped Queen Helen by secretly boarding the Trojan ships. When Menelaus returned from Crete, he received the news and went crazy with anger. He went to his brother Agamemnon. He said he had dishonored the Trojans and wanted revenge. An insult to Menelaus was an insult to Agamemnon. An insult to Agamemnon meant an insult to all of Greece. Agamemnon seemed very angry at this situation. However, he was secretly happy about the situation because Agamemnon, who wanted to keep the power in his hands, had a very good trump card to attack the city of Troy, which had control of the straits. Without wasting any time, he appealed to all the kingdoms in Greece that pledged allegiance to him. King Priam of Troy was astonished when he saw the queen of Spartan king Menelaus next to his sons returning from Sparta. He considered punishing his son Paris and sending Queen Helen back, but now it was too late. The news had already spread throughout Greece, and Agamemnon decided to attack Troy with all his might. Troy had nitrogen monoxide choice but to fight. Its strong walls had not been breached so far, but they did not know what would happen if Agamemnon brought all of Greece to their door. Meanwhile, ambassadors were sent from Greece to Troy. These ambassadors wanted the kidnapped Queen Helen and her kidnapper, Trojan Prince Paris, to be delivered. This meant that Prince Paris would be killed horribly by the Greeks. Old King Priam did not accept this offer because he could not bear the pain of having a child. He also knew that even if he accepted this offer, Agamemnon would still attack here. Thus, preparations for the siege began immediately in Troy. Since King Priam was too old to lead this war, King Priam's eldest son, Prince Hector, would undertake the defense. Prince Hector was the heir to the throne. He was also very loved and respected by the Trojans. He was seen as the best and bravest warrior of Troy because of his high combat ability and command skills. On the other hand, Agamemnon and the Greek city kingdoms were gathering their ships in the port of Athens to attack Troy. The Myrmidon army, considered the best warriors in all of Greece, also joined this army under the leadership of Achilles. Achilles was considered the best warrior in all of Greece. Those who exaggerated his abilities even said that he was immortal. Odysseus, the king of Ithaca and known for his cunning, Aias, known as the strongest and bravest warrior after Achilles, and his army were under the command of Agamemnon. Thus, this great Trojan expedition, in which all Greek city-states participated, began with a fleet of 1190 ships setting off from Athens. Prince Hector literally filled the city of Troy with supplies against a long siege. The wealth of this city was legendary. It also had high-end, thick walls, and good warriors. After the necessary preparations were completed in the city, some precautions and traps were prepared on the beach. Finally, when the Greek army approached the shores of Troy, they found Trojan warriors. The Trojans responded with fiery arrows to prevent the Greeks from landing. Meanwhile, they managed to burn a few Greek ships, But the Greek ships were not stopping. The Trojans were terrified when they realized that hundreds of endless Greek ships were coming towards them. Thereupon, they did not dare to resist any longer and retreated towards the city. Thus, rumors began to spread from ear to ear that the Greeks had come here with a countless army. The Greek army captured the coast of Troy in a short time. Then they attacked the villages, towns and temples around Troy. They killed the men and distributed the women among the commanders. Not only that, they also attacked other cities that were allies of Troy. No one could resist this huge Greek alliance. Among the slave women, a noble woman named Briseis, who was famous for her beauty, fell into Achilles' share. But King Agamemnon took this woman from Achilles and owned her. For this reason, Achilles, who had a falling out with King Agamemnon, refused to participate in the war and withdrew the Myrmidon army. Although Agamemnon, who did not want to dominate Troy, had a large and powerful army, he lacked the technological means that would enable him to capture the city of Troy, because the walls of Troy were too thick to be demolished with a catapult and too high to be climbed with stairs. That's why the city of Troy was blockaded by the Greeks. Entrances and exits to the city were closed. The Trojans were not alone in this war. According to chapter 2 of the Iliad, the Trojans had many allies in this war. Many countries from various regions of Anatolia and Thrace were helping Troy militarily and economically, although help was requested from the Hittites. The Hittites could not provide any military or economic assistance to the people of the Troy region, which they dominated for a long time, because rebellion movements had begun in every corner of the empire. While some historians called this war the War of East and West, some historians called it the First World War of the Ancient Age. After a long siege, the Trojans convened a council to push the war. Prince Hector claimed that Paris was the reason the war started, and that it was he who had to end it. Accordingly, Paris and Menelaus would fight a one-on-one duel, and the winner of the duel would take Helen. Thus the war would end. When this plan was accepted in the Trojan Council, the Greeks were informed through the ambassador. The Greeks accepted this duel offer. The next day, the armies of both sides faced each other in front of Troy. Spartan King Menelaus and Troy Prince Paris came forward and started a one-on-one duel. While this one-on-one battle continued with the superiority of Spartan King Menelaus, Prince Paris, who was injured in his foot, fell to the ground. When Menelaus was about to kill him, he suddenly got up and started running towards the Trojan army. Thus, the duel was broken up. Thereupon, Agamemnon ordered his soldiers to attack. Greek and Trojan armies clashed in front of the walls of Troy. The Greeks were very numerous in number, but they suffered a lot of casualties because they came within the range of the Trojans' archers. In addition, the order of the Greek soldiers was disrupted. The army was gradually melting under the shower of arrows, since further fighting here would be against the Greeks. Agamemnon ordered to retreat. Thus, the winner of this first war was Troy. The Greeks retreated to their camp on the coast. The reason for the defeat among the soldiers was interpreted as the failure of Achilles and his Myrmidons to participate in the battle. Although the commanders tried to persuade Achilles and his soldiers, Achilles refused to participate in the war. Although Agamemnon gave back the slave girl, Briseis, to convince him, Achilles' mind did not change. Meanwhile, the troops under the command of Prince Hector launched a sudden night raid towards the Greek camp. The Greeks were stunned by the Trojan attack that came unexpectedly. In these attacks, many Greek ships were set on fire by the Trojans. At this moment, when the Greeks were afraid and retreated, the trumpet sounds of the Myrmidons were heard. Achilles, led by Myrmidons dressed in black armor, fearlessly attacked the Trojan soldiers with his army. Other Greek soldiers, who saw Achilles entering the war, found courage in him and attacked. At this moment, when the Greek and Trojan armies were fighting fiercely, Achilles and Hector suddenly came. Face to face, the soldiers of both sides were following the battle between Hector and Achilles with curiosity, because one was the strongest warrior in Greece and the other was the best warrior in Troy. During this duel, Hector killed Achilles. The soldiers of both sides were astonished by this result, because both sides believed that Achilles was truly immortal. When the Spartan king Menelaus took off Achilles' helmet, he realized that he was not Achilles. This person wearing Achilles' armor was Patroclus, Achilles' beloved cousin. Agamemnon realized that he could turn this situation to his advantage. He immediately ordered Patroclus' body to be taken to Achilles. Achilles was very angry when he learned that his cousin Patroclus was killed by Hector. Now Achilles had a reason to go to war. In the morning, Achilles jumped on his horse and came alone to the walls of Troy. He challenged Hector to a one-on-one duel to avenge his murdered cousin. This was a challenge by the best warrior of the West against the best warrior of the East. No one would dare to fight a one-on-one duel with Achilles. However, Hector did not disappoint the trust of the Trojans who believed in him and accepted this duel offer. All of Troy went up to the walls and bastions and started to watch the duel of these two great warriors. There was a fierce fight between Achilles and Hector, but the winner of the duel was Achilles, the best warrior in the West. After killing Hector, he tied his body to his horse and dragged it to the Greek camp, as Hector's body was torn to pieces. This situation almost devastated the Trojans. Thus, the Trojans lost their commander-in-chief and their prince. Shortly after this, the Trojans' allies came to help Troy with large armies. Thus, the number of Trojans became quite crowded. A plague epidemic started in the Greek camp. Even though the Trojans lost their prince, the war was going in favor of the Trojans. Agamemnon and his army were seriously demoralized by this situation. If Troy and its allies attacked the Greek camp on the coast once again, it could be a disaster for the Greeks. Thereupon, a very cunning idea came to the mind of Odysseus, king of Ithaca. It was known that there was a large horse statue in the heart of the city of Troy. The horse was a sacred animal for the Trojans. According to Odysseus' plan, the Greeks appeared to retreat from the war and left behind a large wooden horse model, while Odysseus and other distinguished commanders hid inside the horse. The others went to sea and hid behind their ship Boscada, where the Trojans could not see them. Seeing that the Greeks were withdrawing, the Trojans went down to the beach in surprise and came to this giant wooden horse. They interpreted this as a gift from the gods they believed in. Some of the oracles recommended taking this gift to the city. Thus, the god they believed in would protect their city forever. Although there were those who opposed this idea, the council ultimately decided to take the horse to the city. Thereupon, they immediately took this horse to their city. The Trojans had now won the war. The Trojans, who had been having fun with peace celebrations all night long and passed out drunk, under the influence of wine, would be taken by surprise by the Greeks inside the horse. In the darkest hour of the night, the Greeks secretly emerged from the horse, killed the sleeping Trojan guards, and opened the gates of the city. Then they signaled to the Greeks waiting outside. The Greek army took immediate action and attacked the city of Troy. They burst in through the open city gate and turned the city upside down. The Greeks showed nitrogen monoxide mercy to anyone that night. They brutally killed the elderly, children, and even babies by Agamemnon's order. They completely set the city on fire. Although the Trojan soldiers offered weak resistance to the Greeks who had entered their city, it was useless. While the city was being plundered by the Greeks, Prince Paris found an opportunity and took his revenge on Achilles, who killed his brother. He killed Achilles by shooting him with an arrow while he was fighting. Thus, the story of King Achilles of Troy, called the Immortal, ended here. The Greeks, who plundered the city, finally captured the inner castle. They also massacred King Priam and his family, who were here. Hector's young son was thrown from the castle walls and killed. Paris, who tried to protect Helen, also died here. Hector's wife was given to Achilles' son Neoptolemus at the end of the war. Spartan king Menelaus returned to Sparta with Achilles' wife Helen. After Troy suffered a great massacre and its cities were burned by the Greeks, very few Trojans, especially Aeneas, one of the Trojan princes, managed to survive this destruction. The survivors dispersed to various parts of Anatolia and continued their lives there. The happiness of King Agamemnon, who returned to his country with a great victory, did not last long. The war really lasted for a very long time, and during this time, Agamemnon's queen, Clytemnestra, cheated on him with someone else during his absence. This woman, who was also Helen's sister, seized the opportunity and killed him in the palace. Thus, the story of the great king of the Greeks, Agamemnon, ended here. Although the Greeks defeated the Trojans and destroyed the city of Troy, they still could not achieve their real goal. That is, they could not cross the straits and colonize the Black Sea coast, because the Dorians, who came to escape from the great famine in Europe, started to invade the Mycenaean civilization and turn the Greek city-states upside down. The Greeks, who were defeated by this great Doric invasion, had to migrate to Anatolia. The migration of the Greeks to Anatolia caused the tribes here to migrate further east. This wave of migration grew so large that it caused the collapse of the Hittite state. In the future, it would also cause the collapse of the Mitanni and Babylonian states. The Trojans, who were in the middle of this migration wave, realizing that they could nitrogen monoxide longer hold on in Anatolia, they boarded ships and migrated to the Italian coast. Another tribe that migrated to the Italian coast was a group from the Soccers. Thus, the Trojans and Soccers, who had migrated here before, mixed and fused and formed a tribe called Etruscans or Soccers. Therefore, the origins of this new tribe in Italy were based on both Anatolia and Central Asia. Later, this tribe would lay the foundations of the Roman Empire, one of the most powerful states in history.